Greetings, dwellers of Midgard Earth. Today is Friday, July 26th, 2024, on the Gregorian calendar, which I have no idea what that means. 2:55 a.m. I've been going through it. I really don't have any energy or conversation outside of neurological complications that I've been experiencing. We'll just leave it to the past couple days. And I will say that with a heavy heart, the attacks have been just increasingly devastating, and I realize I am not the only one by far in this global act of genocide and Unam Sanctum operations. Please excuse my crusty nose. I swear that's actually boogers. I just woke up. But yeah, I'm not the only one. Since I think spoken last, generally trying to recall on this channel anyway. I think I was demonstrating a operation a couple months ago that I was doing in terms of attempts to demonstrate my own or make and then demonstrate my own Moorish American identity card. I've since made 2 more since then, corrected some of the language, and boy, as the prophet Noble Drew Ali states, your identity card shall change in your pocket or something of the sort. And please excuse me if I'm not well versed with that, as you know I should be. But first, let me disclaim that throughout all of the scrutiny, Unam Sanctum operations, MK Ultra infiltrations, and gang stalking textbook come to life terrorism that I've been experiencing for the last 20 plus years. Presumably, I think I was put on the Patriot Act list. I'm saying all of these things denotatively. But yeah, I think I was put on the Patriot Act list because I went to a political science school in 2001 where we were dissecting the Bush administration right before and as 9/11 happened. So while everyone else was like emotionally panicking, we're looking at I personally, of all things to remember, just remember standing behind my matriarch in the living room of her house that I would come to leave shortly after. But just watching everyone watch the impact. And we, at least the students that went to this school, it was an all-black political science alternative school that I loved and underlined my passion for activism and anti-human rights, human trafficking, advocacy, and spoken word. Everything, my whole being was centered after this vision that we can make a difference, then at probably like 14, 15 years old. But little did I know. I was likely put on this list, and it's been a ride ever since. So yeah. Anyway, what was I disclaiming? That oh yeah, when that happened, we were looking into the moving of like funds and stuff from his administration. I don't quite remember the details of it, and am barely getting those memories back now. So yeah, what I was disclaiming was that people's perceptions of me, and rightfully so, I guess, my actions online, it has always kind of been a satirical artistic means of expression to provoke thought, less than popular thought processing and critical thinking, at least prior to the vehicular assault that was imposed upon me in 2006, right before I turned 21, which I just in the past 5 years have been realizing was never an accident at all. And as what is the main thing that caused which caused these neurological experiences that I still struggle with daily. I was apparently I just skimmed through a couple of videos and their captions, and since have just introduced myself online. Yeah, so since then I around then, I had always, had this kind of conscious effort to try to lightly and ability to make light of world situations that were going on then as a teenager, and coming of age, and under these Unam Sanctum operations, what I now know to name them as, being a kid, you just in poverty, I guess. We were we had our days of struggle or whatever, I guess middle class or whatever, but being a kid, if you can relate to being a kid, surrounded in circumstances, and with this pigment of skin, Moorish American, misnomered as black Negro colored in America, then you might be able to relate to growing up under circumstances where you're in a child's place, but you have certain awareness around you due to the continued I had awareness around me anyway, due to the continued violations of my space, of my safety, of my livelihood. We grew up, and my matriarch was heavily involved in the legal system as a legal secretary. Computers, so we had computers before they kind of hit the mainstream, ever since the 80s, and I kind of remember vaguely. When I say remember, it's not what you would think it is. Like how they depict it in the movies when people lose their memory and then bump their head on, it's all back. No, it's basically just like one continuous flashback, if I had to describe it, and could finally sort of attempt to better than I have. It's just like one continuous flashback slash dream, and sometimes it does have elements of dreams where my wires are crossed, or perceptions of memory that have taken some time to resurface, even in the most minimal of senses, like, oh, okay, I just remember being there, and this was the feeling, or this was the general scenario, if that much. But anyway, so you know growing up kind of with computers in the home, we kind of used to joke with her and be like, you know, this big old, back in the day in the 80s, they were huge contraptions. Again, I'm trying to retain and relay at a pace that my memory isn't filling. So anyway, yeah, computers were huge in a general sense, and these just awkward looking machines, and we're like, what are you doing with this thing? Nobody, this isn't a thing. And still to this day, it's a thing, as you all may have come to learn in your own time. And especially the new age characters who this is, what life is centered around now, especially due to this blackout that happened where apparently I was blacked out. Because I wasn't present for that. No, all jokes aside, these motherfuckers done killed my god baby's dad. And yeah, I'm not gonna take that there that soon. So yeah. The demonstrations, which I'm not trying to detour anyone away from, nor am I at a place where I even feel the need to address anyone in terms of my presence online. Was what I was getting at. We kind of had access to that stuff in the 80s. Old school snake. Remember the snake that people might have had on their phones in the earlier 90s, which I did totally opt out of the phone culture until it was, a planned obsolescence in society that was necessary. And I'm like telling people, hey guys, fuck, doesn't it look like the surface that you put your fingerprints on when you're getting arrested, etc. Anyway, so I say that to say this whole fingerprint reading thing I still believe is nonsense. Like if you're touching that screen, they know. Anyway, the technological aspect of things is far deeper than I know or care to have involuntarily and voluntarily opted into when it comes to the culture of computers and technology. I was very keenly aware as the culture began to evolve back then in the late 80s, early 90s, that we, were kind of ahead of the curve when it came to that sort of stuff. I started, watching my mom kind of, go from working very hard to losing, her parents, and then just kind of the screen became her main source of attention. And with that, there were things going on in the background that I still struggle with and that we're working through. But I also had realized how important this thing was getting ready to be in society. And it was also my means of escape at times, periods of times during my upbringing where I was the baby of 5 and didn't really get to play video games. And I didn't realize it until, recovering, moment of silence for that. Recovering from this brain injury attack that was one of, I want to say, 3 vehicular attempts to run me down on the right of way within the span of 1 or 2 years, whatever. Don't quote me, but it's something close to that. But within that, I lost my train of thought. I'm all over the place. I realized that, this tool was going to be something in society that was important somehow, and it was changing. I know, my lifestyle, and that, my mom just kind of worked and then was on this computer and fixing computers a lot. But the things that were going on around us were things that and, growing up in parochial schools, Christian and Catholic schools, there was just this huge disconnect of culture. And I think at the time you had this element in media. So, yeah, media was my other passion that I wanted to get into, and spoken word and stuff prior to all of this. But yeah, I was very keenly aware of how important media was, because even as a child, with these concepts that should be, off limits, or things that we shouldn't be exposed to, or, we're raised to not speak about or see, in terms of censorship in the home, there was still access to media, different types of media, being the baby and watching, my older siblings go through their teenage shit. I had a brother that was like heavily into the streets, and wanted to like prove himself as being the black kid or whatever, due to his light complexion and blue eyes. So he just kind of went extra hard on the thug angle. I had a brother who was super awkward, and just some personal stuff that I didn't agree with how, we were left in his care, which further led me to the awareness of these other means of communication and community outside of my home that I kind of, shaped, that really, shaped my character, when there was no one else to talk to, no one to validate my questions. And I'm not saying this to shit on anyone, nor to really make this like a therapy session of trauma dumping or anything like that. I'm not gonna go off into my personal life, which is this is the epitome kind of the irony here, that I'm getting these calls to duty that I don't think people realize that I'm not my fucking avatar online. Yes and no. I appreciate, those few who are supportive. Yes, I see and I hear you. But I also have, run into this conundrum where people think that I am my artistic expression. And that's not the case. I am going through some stuff that I have been trying to warn the public about heavily since back then, when it was just, hey, we're black kids, and a mixed, family that is being heavily harassed in this community of Catholics. Let's just keep it real. That's what it was that terrorized us. And, that wasn't a struggle that was related to, because we were too white for the black kids, and we were too black for the white kids. And then when it came to, the power structures in the mix, we were to be, reprimanded and corrected and shut up and arrested and suspended, and all the while they're terrorizing, my other sister, who is like, who's dark skinned. Yeah, we went through a lot of shit behind this, engraved classism and apartheid type thinking within society that has, never until now been addressed, and is still not being properly addressed, because what it's coming down to is statelessness across the board. Whether it be these scares, and I'm not trying to say this to minimize or uphold myself as superior to anyone else across the world who is struggling, because I realize that even now, the weight of the terror that I experience daily with this gang stalking MK Ultra, what is truly called the Unam Sanctum operations, appointed by the British Crown and the Vatican to enslave and experiment on us. The lawful term is usurp. I know that there are true casualties, and I'm lucky, I guess, enough to not have been murdered. But this past week, I'm saying all this to say that this past week, after the murder of my god baby's dad, which I'm still not even haven't even processed really. The death of their roommate, who's my other buddy's dad, and the running over of his sister. These things they don't seem coincidental to me at all, especially including to what I have been able to uncover about this territory that I live in. Colorado territory, and the things that I have been experiencing even prior to discovering nationality, since coming back here. It's been nonstop, harassment, and I, even now I'm struggling to place, outside of, the neurological difficulties, I'm struggling to place and to name, just how deep and thoroughly infiltrated and obstructed my efforts have been, even prior to discovering nationality, due to the depth of corruption I accidentally uncovered, and still am not even fully aware of. So I don't know where this is going, where it's, so yeah, you can see now the effects of what I'm trying to work through. And although I am grateful that I have had that, those few months of neurology before the, infiltration, which led, to her resigning, and that's usually a huge telltale of, the corruption and just, yeah, a bad sign of malpractice to come, and which had come, that left me in, a regression after a brief moment, which you might catch on my TikTok, my original TikTok that I just made last year, simply to reflect on myself, and this process of neurological recovery, retention, and relay, which is what this has been for me for the past 20 years in terms of my presence online, is what I'm getting at. Little did I know, I knew people kept trying to steer me to Facebook, and I was just like, I'm not with the shits, and there have been instances where, I feel like people who are involved in the infiltration were trying to give me hints on where, to look, and I didn't realize that it was that deep, and they were that engulfed in their oaths, to where, and still am not fully realized, to where, they couldn't just outwardly say it. And I also am realizing in retrospect as well that, I may have been neurodivergent to begin with, and this just kind of exacerbated it, but it also delayed me in ways that, when it comes to learning and expressing myself, that I never dealt with before. I didn't have those problems. So when it came to, computers in the late 80s, I would say, I'll say, early 90s is when I was allowed kind of to be, playing on the computer, and I only was allowed when the other kids weren't. So I had very few moments myself to where I could do recreational stuff without the older kids, just being pure assholes. um, so my pastimes were, reading the encyclopedia and more intellectually based, and in terms of creative based, they were, hands-on artistic, sort of stuff. So I never had, much of an upbringing with gaming outside of, Nintendo, where I would have to wait till the rest of them left and got off the machine to play Duck Hunt. So even still to this day, when it comes to arcade guns and arcade guns only, I be fucking them kids up. like, but, um, and no, and like laser tag and things like that. Um, so yeah, in gaming or in play gun context, that's all that I got from the gaming world. I know they used to have a game back in the day with like Robin Hood that just popped up in my memory, like for some odd reason. Weird though. I was stuck in like 1993, and I was able to recall like mad songs. That every song that I was recalling was from 1993. I was like, I think this is when this game came out, and I like found it, and there was like some shit on YouTube that walked me through it. And even though I wasn't able to play, like there was something about even the sounds of that game that was, mad drawing you in. And now looking at it as an adult, that Robin Hood game, I wish I could remember, something Quest, I think. But yeah, it's based around the Dark Priesthood. So like, yeah, even then it was in the culture of technology, and that's all I can remember right now as far as gaming went. You had Doom, you had Wolfenstein, so again, war training early on. And then when it came to online chat rooms, it was this is prior to AOL and all that stuff. But yeah, online chat rooms were just like you had mad access to usually sexually explicit things. But also I was able to find platforms where I could speak with adults about things, concepts that weren't allowed in the home. So there's a couple places that I could go with this conversation. In terms of exploration of sexuality, censorship, and then this age development, whatever. But that's not what I was speaking about. What I'm talking about is the development of my own character and kind of sounding off on, the technological the technological community and technological communities back then, which was both dangerous and essential to the being that I have, become and accidentally evolved into for the most part. So back then, there wasn't really any supervision or parameters for me to get online. I think my mom just had a general trust in the type of kid that I was. And I think a lot of us, had that general trust and just installation in society that, that's a no and this is a yeah. So I had the trust to go online, but I absolutely had the mind too, to where there's a word for it that she was telling me about the other day, where you could, that I still struggle with and is the main problem in my neurological recovery, where was able to, word things in such a way that I could draw it out of, I guess is what you guys call the metaverse now. I don't know if that's correct, but I was able to draw it out of the technological world, like specifically on point every time. And then there would be times that I would go into chat rooms and stuff with adults that were talking about dumb shit or coming at me. Like, we would literally bait pedophiles to out, to rob, whatever. I'm not gonna get all off into that or glorify that. But what I'm getting at is that I had this ability to that's I didn't think was anything special, was to just draw any information out of the web, just by wording it right. And that's something that's not accessible in this day and age, and I think has become the very aspect of information that they're have been experimenting on diminishing and monopolizing into trains of pools of thought that they control. That's a whole nother aspect of it too. So mind you, my upbringing with computers as it was, and then break from that due to continued fucking harassment and just being in jail more than half of my adult life and teenage life, due to no fault of my own outside of a BB gun case that was drawn out, got me sucked into their system, allowed them to justify my dad's cruelty, whatever. I don't really want to get off into that, but so yeah, in terms of my self recovery and the purposeful weaponization and obstruction of healthcare to assist me, I was forced to finally kind of join Facebook in 2008. And prior to that, there were a couple of other sites that were still close knit. I had no idea that I was being monitored or infiltrated. I had no care about that. Even then, in a mostly mute state, I was just like, I got it. No one gives a fuck about me. I didn't realize that these were I would like to say, for the most part, behaviors influenced by incentive, but the part that I'm struggling with is that there were people that during this mute during my worst stages after the impact, and still to this day, absolutely got off on watching me struggle and not being my best, and still, even these lapses of retention and relay and expression that sidestep me, overtalk me, and make sure to insert their narrative on both a legal and interpersonal interactions, to the point where I was asked last week by my buddy's mom, like, yo, and she's a European, but I definitely have the utmost respect for her. She was one of the few that was just like, sleep on the couch, and I was a mess. But yeah, didn't know her from a can of paint. But yeah, throughout even my whole entire upbringing before then, there have been Europeans that allowed me to crash on their couches outside of my own community. So yeah, this could be going 1,000 different ways that I'm not able to draw back in right now. I'm exhausted. But yeah, she had asked me, how have I been, and I've always hated that question, due to the fact that 9 times out of 10 it's never sincere. People, especially knowing now that mostly it's monitoring motherfuckers that just want to draw out information to report. And then it's people who would have less than pure intentions that just want to assert their own agenda, whether it be, sex, violence, or just something, that is not productive. And I used to have an attitude, back then in my teenage years or whatever, and, growing up as a street kid where I just didn't talk to anyone unless I really like fucked with you or I knew you from middle school or you were an adult who had my best interest at heart and let me crash to go to school or whatever, sitting up drinking, whatever. But yeah, I always hated that question, and especially now because the struggles to articulate myself, although it doesn't sound that way tactfully sometimes. Yeah, and she was like, "How have you been?" And I was like, fighting for my own liberation and liberation for the world. And that's like the most simplistic way that I could put that without, watering it down, as seems to be the notion that I resent, the censorship notion. So yeah, that's heavy on that. And I get it, life or death or whatever. But let me wrap that point around real quick. The fact that nobody spoke up for us as kids, as a culture, and even as adults, for anyone that has gone through any injustice, is exactly why we're here today. And then now to unravel and see that a lot of these things are absolutely preventable based on paid incentive and the overall corruption of the let's see, monetary and or what do you call it, the ultimatum aspect of, like, would you rather be the guy on the chopping block whose all of their friends are getting killed or whatever. And I'm not saying that people are right or wrong, and or that I know. I mean, rather, how these things have really evolved and are presented to you guys. But I'm just saying that aspect of secrecy is exactly why we're here today, and I don't even know where I was going with that. Oh, she asked me if it was worth it, and I said absolutely not. So, I've been struggling with that, and I'm not special, but I am at a point where, niggas just watched me flounder and laughed about it, and even the righteous ones, evoked these same patriarchal animal husbandry behaviors that are, instilled, indoctrinations that are instilled with us through, the establishments of these predatorial elements of society that is now coming to a head. And I just don't have the energy to address what I feel like I already have to the best of my ability prior to, leading up to, and thoroughly about where I'm coming from, all jokes aside. I don't know. It's not quite my responsibility to continuously explain what you guys are watching and participating in actively. Respectfully to those who, are pure with the shits, but, I'm over here floundering unnecessarily, and I kind of resent the fact that now everybody's like, where are you at? Trying to sleep. Trying to sleep safely. And that's another realization that I came down to this past week, is that this literally comes down to a safe place to sleep and exist for all. And there has been remedy, which I am struggling myself to uphold and put forth. But it's just a lot to process, that even within these redemption movements, these secured party creditor movements, these state national movements, and especially, the Moorish American movement, that I've experienced these same behaviors that I just didn't expect at all to see within the movement. Like, yeah, what they call the Hotep knucklehead niggas, but I had to even take a closer look at that shit along the way. And mind you, I don't have, ample blocks of time where I'm able to just sit and do this or do that. And people are looking at it like, well, then why are you online? Because right now, that's all I'm able to do right now. And so I've tried to, assert where I can, how I can, in a productive manner. Sometimes jokingly, even if it comes across, as a, dickhead statement. Lately, though, not to really justify it, sometimes instead of me being able to have the entire conversation, as you see, this shit is all over the place for 40 minutes. Those little sound bites, punchlines, or whatever, that I'm not even able to catch in real time, obviously, when you guys are trying to get me to get shit that's not direct. Like, stop that. I don't hear you. It's automatic ears off. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's... I lost my train of thought. That's all I got. So, since that last demonstration, I wish I could give you a linear explanation of what's been going on. I was poisoned set up and poisoned by someone I cared about, and taunted. Along the way, but I wasn't so easy to recover from this poisoning this time. So, if I owe any explanation about where the fuck I've been, outside of the obvious, 24/7 attacks by, forces that I'm supposed to respect and uphold. And it's just me aside, the realization that these operations have been going on for hundreds of thousands of years this close to myself, and realizing that it's absolutely a fucking inside job that's just been being ignored and swept under the rug by the U.S. Army, the whole industrial complex, military industrial complex, the funding technocrats on that end, or whatever, the usurping technocrats on that end, is what's blowing me. Because not only on the surface is the shit just wrong, but just the silence, the perpetual silence on these matters from inside of your own home, whether it be molestation, whether it be abuse, whether it be the poverty of the neighbor next door, whether it be like when we were kids, the black people in the neighborhood whose house is burning down, but nobody wants to answer the fucking door type shit because we didn't belong. The shit that happens in school, the fact that we're forced to perpetuate as a society for the whole into this predatory system, you know, that is absolutely centered around, I mean, human trafficking, obviously, but it's centered around, you know, birthright theft and murder of innocent people under the guise of, you know, survival and earning a living when there's, you know, plenty for all. And it's just was a matter of, you know, a matter of community. That's the other part that's I'm struggling with right now is, you know, in terms of these secret societies and the knowledge that is being kept away from the public, and the remedies that are being kept, I just don't see any sense in it. And I'm starting to come to a point where even if I was capable, and I'm not trying to, you know, speak negative spells against myself in this time period to make this happen, despite all of the attacks, like what boggles me is like what type of being would not just share this information. And I get it, there are rites of passage, there's this and that and the other, and that was the other thing I was getting at. I'm building my brain from the mind up, so while as you guys think I'm not paying attention to this, that, or the other, there are certain things that structurally in my mind I have to go about a certain way in layers to build this aspect of consciousness. I'm not connecting that dot because I'm not fucking with it right now. I'm focused on, you know, first of all of the stimuli that is, you know, being thrown at me at any given moment, both maliciously and, you know, very, very few and far in between with, you know, pure intent. I already have always realized that I struggle with shit that ain't direct. Like they used to joke with me as kids. Oh, by the way, that hair serum, you see how long my shit is, but they used to joke with me as a kid, or not as a kid, you know, as a baby dyke, and was like, you know, because I guess, you know, I had that way with words or whatever, and I was pulling, you know, grown-ass bitches as a teenager, and, you know, I never slept with them, I don't think. Yes, I did. A few times, but anyway, in the beginning years, yeah, but that's not what the story is about. But yeah, I just, you know, had the company of, you know, grown and intelligent women, and then as I became of age and was still in bars underage, you know, talking to grown women, all the homies would just be like, you dumbass, like a bitch could put her pussy on your face and you don't get it. And I'm like, that's not what I'm on though. And no, I don't. Most of the time I be, you know, green as hell about it. But it was just the way that I conducted myself, I guess, in terms of if I'm trying to, you know, draw a meaningful conversation with you, that's what I'm on. As beautiful as you are, like, I need you to know that, like, we're up here, okay? But yeah, so I mean, all jokes aside and personal, too much information that ain't nobody's motherfucking business. You know, I've always struggled with that non-direct thing. So there are just layers within myself that I'm not going to share, that I shouldn't have to share. And then let's just face it, through the wiretapping and me having to audibly say these things out loud to myself and bounce off of myself, since nobody else wants to fucking make any sense or, you know, validate me. Not that that's, you know, what I'm, you know, my aim is, outside of this shit here. And I don't even need that, you know, I've already spoken it. Maybe there will be a part 2 aspect of this in terms of productivity at law, but I'm just at a point where and have been at a point, I think, you know, in all my life where I'm actually very private. But right now, I'm hurt. I am experiencing neurodivergent issues, nonstop stimuli, and MK Ultra attacks, threats very, very nearby, murder, the burden of the actual human beings left behind while y'all think this is a hee hee ha ha fucking game that's coming to um, that's getting ready to be directed at you. And I've been, ringing that bell for a really long time. In all of my ignorance, even prior to, I'm just at a point where, you know, I don't feel the need to explain what we all already know in terms of morality. Especially because I struggle to express myself now to the point where, I'm still stuck. At this particular point, there seems to be some email interception happening, and, the story goes on. So, how the fuck are you guys on one end and I'm talking to the armed forces needing assistance all of a sudden? You want somebody to bail you out? So, that's my other struggle. Is, yeah, you wiretap,